Okay, okay. All right, well, good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for making the time. I am going to just start with a brief introduction to Maria. Let me share my screen. What? Maybe I'm having bad sharing karma today. Computer karma is not working on my side. Here we go. Here we go. Okay, so please meet Maria Uspenski. I had the pleasure of meeting Maria for the first time. This is very funny. My husband and I, after many of you know, my son had brain surgery when he was 13, and my husband and I were really bad at taking couple vacations and doing things just for us. And after the brain surgery, we desperately needed a break for just the two of us. And we planned what we thought was like the greatest vacation in the world and did a bicycle trip with a company called VBT, leaving from Venice and going around into the Dolomites. It was like, I just wanted to be in Switzerland. I wanted mountains. I wanted like lakes and mountains and all this beautiful space. And the very first day of the trip, we did our own thing in Venice, and we got on this tour bus, and we just planted ourselves with my very poor Italian skills in the front of the bus. And I had my crochet with me, and we're just sitting in the front seats, and this beautiful blonde woman comes on, and she thought I worked for the tour company because we were sitting in the front seat. And so she started talking to me thinking I knew something, and it was really funny. I knew nothing about what was happening, and I was so happy and delighted to meet Maria and her awesome husband. And she's the kind of person you'll see today. We only have a brief amount of time with her, but it's like the more you talk to her, there's just like things just keep coming out that are, each story is more incredible than the last. She's an awesome person to know. So Maria is founder and CEO of the Tea Spot, a Colorado company recognized as a Best for the World certified B Corporation. She's an MIT mechanical engineer by trade and an innovator listed on 3 US patents for steepware inventions, which promote the ease of tea preparation. She is the author of Cancer Hates Tea, published by Page Street Books in 2016, and was recognized as the top tea health advocate at the 2017 World Tea Expo. And I can't remember when it was, but Maria shared recently, and before COVID, these gorgeous photos of trips she's taken to China, like where she's going tea gathering in China. And so hence the connection to all the tea in China, like bringing us back to Shanghai and having a non-alcoholic midday moment together with you, Maria. So maybe you can tell us why tea? Like how did you get into the tea business, coming from MIT into technology to tea?
I will, and it's actually, so I need to apologize first and foremost for the way I look. I would have absolutely, so the picture that Tanya showed of me on my balcony, that's exactly where I am, in the middle of nowhere, 8,500 feet. And I actually am no longer pressed for time because my day has changed, but a bunch of unexpected things came up this morning at work, and I have been on the phone and on Zoom until the very moment when I'm speaking with you. So unfortunately, there is no lipstick, there is no shower, and I'm hiding my hair. So the beautiful blonde is not so beautiful any longer. But why tea? So, so many things. So tea is the most consumed beverage on the planet after water. So it's always been tea. So ever since the time, and we'll talk more about tea in China, and specifically when you talked about spring and rebirth, and I'm not going to share my screen, but hopefully this gets, is that in focus well enough for you all to see?
Yes.
This spring's bloom. And this is we adopted a particular tree, which I won't get into that much detail. It obviously takes a lot of trees to make tea, but this is a wild tea forest. And I was going to bring up a book, which I think Tanya may have already shared the title of you all with, called The Tea Girl of Hummingbird Lane. And that all takes place in southwestern China at the time of the pu'er boom, as they call it. Pu'er is a type of tea, which was probably the first tea that came from those kind of wild tea trees. And the way that it came about was in the year 2737 BCE, the Emperor Shennong, who is known as the granddaddy of modern agriculture, essentially saved his population from the plague, had said that everyone had to boil their water before they drank it. And by that simple edict, he saved many, many, many Chinese lives. And as legend has it, the emperor was boiling water under a tree, as he had dictated everyone should do. And some leaves were wafting in the breeze and fell into his pot of water and made an amazing elixir of which the aroma really seduced him. And then he tasted it, and that gave him kind of enhanced health and a better, longer life. So hence, that's how tea was born. Those are tea leaves that drifted off of trees like the ones that I just showed you and bouncing around a little bit. Tanya and I are both Geminis, so she will relate. Hopefully the rest of you can too. What better way to kind of see this rebirth of spring? And I'm so glad that she started with that message, because that is how the beginning of spring is marked in China. So last year, it was kind of the end of the pandemic and lockdown for them was right at the start of spring. And the way that they showed everyone that they were back was to have Xi Jinping, so the premier, head of the Communist Party, go visit lots of different tea farmers on their first day of plucking. So like we have opening day of baseball, which means spring in the US. In China, it's the beginning of tea season. So that tea tradition has been going on there for 5,000 years almost. And at this point, we are drinking tea both for enjoyment and for its health benefits, its reputed health benefits. And I like to say tried and true, because there are thousands of studies that demonstrate the health benefits of tea, even though there is no minimum daily requirement of antioxidants that's put out by the Food and Drug Administration. We have all come to the conclusion that antioxidants are definitely a healthful aspect to our diet. And it is the polyphenols in tea are the #1 source of antioxidants in the human diet, which is something that we don't often consider. But because tea is such a global beverage, that's the other beautiful thing about it. It really is consumed everywhere. So even though coffee is becoming much more universal with each decade, tea is something that there's 3 times as much tea consumed in the world as there is coffee. And again, being that #1 source of polyphenol antioxidants in the human diet, people have been looking to tea. So those first few thousand years, so from about 2737 BCE until about 200 BCE, it was only consumed medicinally. And then it started to become more of a social beverage. And in the 9th and 10th century Christian era, it became a very renowned, a very kind of high class beverage in China. And you've probably heard of people talk about emperor's teas. So there was a tax put on tea, and those producers that made the tea that the emperor at any given time loved the most had to pay their taxes in giving him the best part of their harvest every year. So that's, I guess, the way a lot of governments probably still work. But having these empirical kind of designations for teas, there are 10 of them that have been called emperor's teas in China. And interestingly, my favorite, which is that pu'er tea that comes from the birthplace of tea, is not one of those, has not been one of those. But the book that I will highly recommend, and I won't go into the big pu'er bubble, but it's something that anyone who's interested in those kind of financial upside downs on products will relate to. That happened in the 1970s. And this book is written by an author by the name of Lisa C. It takes place in Yunnan province, as I said, and has everything to do with these wild tea trees. And so the photos that I showed you are from that type of tree. And I wanted to show you, it's a wild harvest green puer. So it is truly the closest thing that you can find to a fresh tea leaf. I'm going to put some on my tray, but when I start to lean things up for Zoom, it's often a disaster. But here you can see, and in fact, you ladies might laugh, that's a knitting injury on my thumb. The air here is so dry that sometimes it splits open. And I mentioned to Tanya recently that I'm furiously working on a couple of baby blankets. So getting those finished. In fact, one of them's coming tonight, being induced. So these are very large leaf teas. And I so appreciate being with you during the week of Passover, because in my mind, tea is a bitter herb. Tea is perfect for Passover because it's very centering. So another reason for why tea, not only for its kind of disease fighting capabilities and for its immunity boosting properties, but there's an amino acid in tea that is unique to tea that is absolutely, I call it in my book, actually, a mashup of chill pill and rain juice. It's called L-theanine. And the L just means that it's a slightly different chemical structure than straight theanine. But L-theanine mitigates the effects of caffeine. So the caffeine molecule that's in tea is the same as the caffeine molecule that you'll get in coffee or chocolate or Coca-Cola, but the effects are very different, right? So when you have something like coffee, an espresso, you feel the effects rapidly, and then you really don't feel much of it. In fact, you might even feel a little bit down an hour later. With tea, you'll feel a gentle lift, but it will stay with you much longer. So the pro cycling team that is out of the town where my company is in Boulder, Colorado, have a doctor who has theoretically a very proprietary, we supply him a lot of the herbs that are in this tea, but we don't supply all of them because no one's allowed to know the formula. So he has an endurance tea, endurance beverage, which is based on green tea that they give to their cyclists. And it's specifically because it is this kind of enduring but lower level caffeine effect. Let's see, what else can we say about the goodness of tea?
I am so excited to hear that because I love green tea. So
And you love to cycle. So
this is good. This is good.
And
well,
I love cold brew my tea when I cycle. In fact, I will send you, Tanita, I have a new gift. So there's a new cold brew bottle that we're coming out with in a couple of weeks that I actually designed to be perfect for the bicycle.
That's awesome.
Yeah, I'll send you that. And then I even have a Saratoga tea and honey tumbler that I wanted to send you. But that aside, that L-theanine is very calming. And in fact, it being unique to tea, it is actually extracted from tea and now made into a supplement medication that is given to children with ADHD. So it is both focusing and calming. And so what more could you ask for during a week of reflection? And when we're consuming bitter herbs, whether it's tea or not, bitter is beneficial, I often like to say with tea. And, again, a good reminder during the week of Passover. And bitterness, generally when we sense it in an herb, is because of certain molecules that are in that herb that keep it healthier from invaders like pests. So if a bird or an animal comes by and bites into tea, it's going to be like, ooh, bitter. I'm going elsewhere. I'm going to go eat lettuce, right? And the tea leaf stays intact. And it's that bitterness, which is basically part of its own immune system. So plants aren't equipped with an immune system, but they fight off disease and other kind of predators in their own way, and that's through peculiar tastes. And so generally when we do taste bitter in an herb, it's because it's very good for us. So gosh, on that note, I was going to show you, I do have here a nice, of course, I've got Chinese teapots around me always. Unfortunately, this morning I've been steeping the same pot, which I adore. It's a side-handled Japanese pot, which is holding these leaves. And so I showed you the dry leaves. I just want to show you how beautifully these open up. So that was the leaves drying. At the risk of making a nice mess, this is how they open up. So they're just huge, right? In fact, we're going to get one, get a couple here. Wow, there's a biggie. I feel like I'm dealing with fish. Look at the size of that leaf. So these leaves that come from the birthplace of tea are slightly larger, the ones that come off the wild trees. And I've been drinking this tea pretty steadily this past year because that larger tea leaf has a molecule in it called strychnine, not to be confused with the poisonous molecule compound strychnine, but strychnine has very strong antiviral properties. So in China, when people do tea ceremony, and in Shanghai, they will take a small little teapot. So this is probably on the order of, my cup is probably 10 ounces. So I bought this cup in China, but of course, only a garish American would buy a cup this size in China. The largest cups that you would be served tea in China in is something like this, which is probably like a 2-ounce shot glass size. This is 8 to 10 ounces. So this little teapot, this is the most steep up, and this is not a personal pot. This is going to serve a table of 4 to 6 people that are having tea with you in these kind of cups. You never fill the cup. So just like we keep seats empty at the table, we only fill our cups 2/3 of the way because the last third is for a guest who is not with us. And we would put a fair amount of tea into this teapot. So again, I'm just going to very rudely show you with the leaves that I'm handling by hand, you know, probably like a good tablespoon. And this is not the way that we would instruct fellow Americans to make tea at home, but we would put a good amount of tea leaves in that pot and then put the appropriate temperature water, which for this type of tea is short of boiling, about 195 Fahrenheit, and just steep it for 15 seconds and then pour it off into the little cups. And it's a wonderful ceremony because when you do very short steeps with large amounts of leaf and smaller amounts of water, you can re-steep that tea 7 or 8 times. And each steeping is a little bit different. So it's the most incredible tea I ever had was from a gentleman kind of in central China near the coastal area that makes our 8 Immortals oolong. And he has one tree that is the most ancient one on his property. And there's a businessman in Hong Kong who buys up all the leaves from that tree every year. But the tea farmer keeps a little for himself. So when I was there with my team and we kind of signed our deal with him for his tea, he served us that tea. And I kid you not, that tea, it went on and told a story for about 20 infusions. And it's different every infusion. And the older the tea tree, kind of the more you can steep its leaves with new growth, because that tree has history. And so yeah, back to why tea. I love the story of tea, obviously. I love what it does to me. I came to tea for its health benefits, in particular green tea, but I did grow up drinking black tea. So I've always loved it, but came to different kind of more antioxidant rich types of tea for its health benefits, but have started my company really as a result of great love for wanting to spread. I'd love to change the habits of American drinkers, right? So instead of having either a soda or a sugary latte in the afternoon, have some tea, have it with a friend. It will calm you down. It promotes what a colleague of mine called sparkling conversation. And I often think about that in the evenings. If I'm walking my dog near my Boulder apartment, there's a bar that's just always open. And no matter how late I go, the conversation's kind of getting louder and louder. And I think, well, they're not drinking tea, that's for sure. So it's a lovely, unifying, healthful beverage and something which can connect all of us. So it's also very diverse. So there's got to be a tea that pretty much anyone can love. There's such variety that if you've tried tea and you think you may not like it, you are very likely to be able to find something. And if it's not a tea, maybe it's an herbal that will work well for you. So on that note, I will share with Tanya a discount code for the tea spot. And yeah, I'll get that out to you so that you can get that to your group. And I believe, yeah, I'm not going to say it now just because I think I'll get it wrong.
That's great. That's so nice. Thank you so much for that. That's great.
Yeah.
I have purchased many holiday gifts. The Tea Spot also does a really nice job with gifts. So even like teacher gifts or things like that, it's a really smart gift. Like who can't relate to like needing a nice, beautiful cup of tea? Like, I don't know, I grew up in a tea household, so I'm partial, but I wondered if, you know, just thinking about your connection to tea, and you talked about drinking black tea, and I can't think of the word you used to describe your grandmother, who I know, like Judy Kolb, was really instrumental in raising you and making you the person you are today. And I wondered if you could talk a little bit about your grandma, the connection to your grandmother in your own tea journey.
It's hard for me to talk about moms today, but I will. And I told Tanya before we started, the reason that I have not gotten dressed yet today is because two of my colleagues, and one of them, the one that I'm closest to, lost her mother last night in a horrific accident. And so I've been, just on the phone with this woman who is, you know, basically I've been working with her for 14 years and she's like a daughter, and I know her family well. And it's just a difficult thing. So the women in our lives. So my grandma was born in 1900 in obviously in Tsarist Russia. And she was from Minsk. She was a Jewish girl, and married, became a musician, as of course many Jews and my daughters are as well. And that's just part of our tradition. And I'm sure that was a very difficult early upbringing. She never much talked about it. She had 3 brothers, and 2 of them were killed during the revolution, and one was, you know, shot under Stalin. But at the age of 17, obviously the revolution broke out, her age of 17. She left so she stopped studying at that time and then got a job as an accompanist in the opera. And what brought her ultimately to the United States was she was accompanist at the Metropolitan Opera for about 50 years and came here at the end of World War II. But when the opera closed down during that war, she went to go work as a pianist in a silent movie theater. So just playing the piano. And apparently one night, this movie star, who was Swiss German, who is my mother's father, came in. They fell in love. They got married like instantly. My grandma's 22. And after she died, one time I took a photograph of her out of a frame because I wanted to put it in a nicer frame. And on the back of that photograph of my 24-year-old grandma was the hottest note to her husband. I'm just like, whoa! You know? And I'm just like looking at the picture and I'm like, oh my God, I recognize you. I recognize the handwriting. I can't believe that's you writing this. But she had written a note to him on the back of that photo. That father of my mother's died in the Volga 6 weeks before my mother was born. So my mother never knew her dad. My grandma remarried with a Jewish gentleman, an economist, when my mom was 3. And then when the Germans came in, my mother's born in 1924. So when my mother was 16, her father, and, I don't actually even know if she knew that he was her stepfather, because she always calls him her father, but I had heard the story about her father from her. So clearly she found out at some point. When the Germans came in, my mother's stepdad was put into the local camp in Minsk, and also on a horrific day, my mother came and saw her father put to death in a common grave. So at that point, she and her mother and her grandmother, who had Polish roots, all picked up and went into the woods outside of Minsk to escape to Poland, and lived, Tanya and I laugh about this. I have this samovar, this like heavy samovar. It's not fun to carry, but they carried their tea samovar as refugees in the woods. And, none of us can talk about these stories without really, I know that I don't know the tip of the horrors that must have happened, but they did ultimately get out. My grandma lived to the age of 91 and a half, had a great life in New York. I mean, no musicians that I know are wealthy, but we were happy. And she was a happy person with all the tragedy she had in her life. Every week we celebrated the end of the week. We had friends that came over. There was music, there was dancing. It was always a party, as I've told Tanya. And so I am very grateful for my roots, for what I know, for what I don't know, for what was just passed to me and lives in my heart. And, needless to say, our memories of the people that we love and that are dear to us, and their paths and our exodus. And I remember growing up thinking, well, gosh, our lives are so completely perfect. Nothing horrible is happening during our lifetimes. I was a little late for knowing Vietnam. And then it started to hit. And I just remember when 9/11 happened, I thought, okay, so life can get tragic again in a big hurry. And then it just doesn't seem to stop raining sometimes. Yeah. So anyway.
Well, rain makes the tea grow, right?
Yeah. So tell me, are there any questions? I would love to answer them. I don't know if you probably don't bring your knitting with you to your Zooms, but I would love to.
Are you kidding me? Yes, we do. Oh my God, always. Ooh, Wendy, that's looking gorgeous. That's your Calphalon. Oh my God.
Wait, how do I get gallery? Hang on here. Oh, there we go.
Ooh, Melissa. Amazing. Well, and I wonder if we could ask you, Mrs. Kolb, if tea was part of your family tradition. Did that piece of living in China sort of become a part of your family's lifestyle?
Well, interestingly enough, I never had tea when I lived in Shanghai.
Wow.
I had tea when I went back for visits, and every restaurant, the tea was just excellent. And, I didn't ask people what kind of tea it was. It was always green tea. It was served just like you talked about in the little cups, and it was always perfect. I've never been able to get that perfect tea here. But having said that, it's the circumstances that you're under and the people that you're with that makes the occasion come to life, as well as what you're eating or what you're drinking. So in my years in Shanghai till the age of nearly 8, we had a kosher household. Germans drink coffee. I don't remember them drinking a lot of coffee. I don't know if you could actually get a lot of coffee. So tea actually didn't come into my being till I have a girlfriend who was my roommate in nurses training, who, after she finished doing nursing type of jobs, did a tea and etiquette class for kids.
Oh, beautiful.
So, you know, I would listen to some of her lectures and she pushed us all to drink tea. So for at least 15 years, I drink nothing but tea. So I don't like pop, I don't like milk. Water's okay. So winter, summer, doesn't matter. I drink hot tea, don't like iced tea. So I have Harney's.
Oh, they're wonderful.
I get Todd and Hollands, and I have Republic of Tea. So these are my choices right now. I'm very eager to try your teas.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, John Harney he's now passed, but he was one of my mentors in tea. And I'm still close with the family and I admire the company very much. Yeah.
So when my grandchildren were younger, maybe 5, 6, I had a group of my friends bring their granddaughters. There weren't a lot of boys anyway, so brought the granddaughters and I did a tea party and they were all dressed up with hats. That was the hardest thing I ever did, making all those little sandwiches. Told my girlfriend, you make the scones, I'll take care of the rest. But it was the most fun. And to this day, I remember that wonderful tea party. So tea is at
Well,
this
if we
point,
had known you had this
That skill.
you would have come. Should have sent out more invitations,
For
right?
it this day as well.
Such a fun day.
I'll remember it too. Yeah, that's great.
I
So,
think we're adding a tea party to this museum meetup that we're having. There has to be a tea party, and you don't need to make the sandwiches. We'll go, but this is just too good. This is too good.
Yeah, there needs to be
so
somewhere with
why
high
do you
tea.
think tea has not caught on in this country as much as coffee?
So interestingly, in the last year, I think it's cultural to answer your question. So in the past year, tea has grown more in this country than in any other year ever. And that is because people needed to calm down.
Mhm.
We're not like that in this country. Look at the countries that are big on coffee. It's Italy, it's Brazil, it's the, it's New York City. So I think that it's largely cultural. People get into quality tea only if they take the time to steep it, to watch the leaves.
Mhm.
And unfortunately, or whatever, for better or worse, that's not what our culture has been about in our lifetimes. And before World War II, we were a tea drinking nation. So there was a lot of anti-tea propaganda that happened, of course, with the internment of the Japanese and World War II, and green tea was literally gone from our shelves completely until the green tea health craze in the last 15 years.
Mhm. Yeah.
I have a question about
That's something else.
That is crazy.
To think how hate and politics get even into what we put in our bodies, and that is quite something to think about. Sorry, go ahead, Wendy.
I have a question about steeping.
Sure.
I was fascinated about what you were describing, that it was 15 seconds for the Japanese. I did go to Japan, but did not go to a Japanese tea ceremony. My host said she just couldn't sit through another one because it is very slow. So I never quite experienced that. But anyway, just in general, I'm a huge, like Judy, I am a huge tea drinker. It's almost, and even hot in the summer. And a Harney fan. I'm a Sunrise, the cinnamon tea there is, I brew it until it is really thick and a spoon can stand up in it.
Yeah.
But I drink a lot of other kinds of teas, and I always feel like I'm maybe putting, how do you gauge the water temperature? Is there a kettle you can get that will help you with that? I mean, when, it doesn't take a long time to steep things, but like white tea, I know you have to be really careful, as well as with green tea. And sometimes I feel like I oversteep.
We are all guilty of oversteeping at some time or other. I'm going to start the answer by just giving you a little tip. If you do oversteep, just add some water, and sometimes that can help fix things. But yeah, it's a super legitimate question, and something that in general for tea types, black tea, and I'll send Tanya a link to a steeping guide as well on our website. Generally, black tea and herbals is boiling water for 4 to 6 minutes, or some black teas that are more fine, 3 to 5 minutes. Oolongs and Darjeelings, so even though Darjeeling looks black, it's not entirely black. That's about 195 Fahrenheit for about 3 minutes, 2 to 3 minutes on an oolong. And green teas, Japanese green teas, we start them at about 160 Fahrenheit. So really quite cool, kind of the higher end that tea. And I was talking about cold brewing. Cold brewing Japanese green teas is the most forgiving, because Japanese green teas, like many things Japanese, are the most finicky. They are the most finicky, the most unforgiving. Like you go 10 seconds too long on the steep and darn it, I ruined my expensive pot of tea. And cold brewing, on the other hand, if you can drink cooler teas, and I also am not an iced tea fan, but I'm okay with ambient temperature brewed tea. I just don't like adding ice to my beverage. And cold brewing is far more forgiving. But yeah, Japanese teas err on the side of shorter steep, cooler water. You can always make the subsequent steep a little longer, a little hotter. And Japanese, so yeah, normally with Japanese greens, I start at 160, I do the second steep at 175, and the third at like 190 or up. And they're good for 3 steeps generally, Japanese greens. Chinese greens I like for 2 steeps. I start them, yeah, and it's you have to experiment. Each tea is different. Now, white is weird. Some people say do your white tea at 160. I'm more that type. Some people say you hit it with hot water and you let it steep for a long time. And there'll be 2 completely different products when you're finished steeping them. And it's just a matter of preference. Really, there is no right or wrong, except with those finicky Japanese greens. They're meant to be a certain way and they're produced to be that way. And you can tell if they're on or they're off, because when they go bitter, they're super bitter. And unpleasantly so.
Do you keep a thermometer by the kettle?
I don't. I have a temperature controlled kettle, and they're very affordable now. I buy the Bonavita. It's like $65, temperature controlled. You put it where you want it. It's got that, you know, that gooseneck spout. It's a great little kettle. And with the Harney fans in the audience, I was going to say, if you ever feel like going upstate, and springtime could be a beautiful time to go there, they've got a beautiful tasting room in Millerton or Amenia.
New York, upstate New York,
Yeah,
you mean? Okay.
New York, yes. It's the last place actually that I ever went out with my mom. And
It's in Millerton.
okay, yeah.
How far up is that?
Great country drive. It's probably an hour. It's not too far from Millbrook. Might be a little further. Yeah, I
Yeah,
don't
it's
know.
about an hour and a half.
Okay.
And the
Rhinebeck, this is a Rhinebeck weekend, you know, the thing to do, it sounds like.
yarn
Oh.
and tea.
Yarn and tea. Well, and it's so much of what you said about sort of the pace and the calm and the,
Totally.
right, is so, it is such, of course, knitters can understand the language of tea. And it was funny because there I was on that tour bus with my crochet hook trying to make granny squares, and I just learned to crochet, and you didn't say a word about knowing how to knit, and I think I knew you for maybe 2 years, and you said I was in Canada and I was going to Espace Tricot. For anyone who follows Espace Tricot, it's just a divine yarn shop. And I thought, I am making my pilgrimage, even though my family wants to do other things, we have to go to Espace Tricot. And so Maria that morning just happened to email me and say, I need yarn for baby blankets. So she gave me permission to buy her yarn for her at Espace Tricot. I had the best time buying 3 blankets worth of yarn, and then sent me photos. And I thought, how did she not tell me she can also knit? Like and she's an unbelievable cyclist.
Oh, I don't
And
knit like you.
she didn't talk about, wait, you're a ballerina. It's like, it doesn't end. It's just, it's amazing. And hearing you talk about tea reminds me of when you talked about being a woman at IBM before there were more than a couple of women, you know, you were one of a couple of women in the company and working cryogenics. And so it's just funny to hear your encyclopedic knowledge of tea temperatures. I'm thinking like, she's engineering tea. Of course, she's still engineering. So it's great. Oh, we've got a question from Beth about, I don't know how to say it.
Absolutely, rooibos. So that is actually not a tea per se, but, and I'm sorry, I'm bopping about here. I ran out of battery on my machine, and now let me try to set it up so that I don't have to hold on to this thing. So it comes from the South African honeybush or red bush. There's kind of two different types that are often sold simply as rooibos. And it is also, it's very high in antioxidants. If you've read any of the ladies' #1 detective agencies books by Alexander McCall Smith, anytime the stuff hits the fan, people are seated down to a cup of red tea, it's called. And it's very smooth, it's caffeine free. I'm actually coming out with a line of 3 ladies' teas right now. So one for people who are going through PMS, which will be called Venus Rising, which is a hibiscus-based tea with a lot of medicinal herbs for helping with cramps and with mood. And then a tea for called Mamahood, a lactation tea that is actually rooibos based with fenugreek. And it's also very good at helping kind of hormonal action getting regulated. So that's why it's good for women who are making that transition into lactating for the first time. And then the third tea is called Women's Wisdom. And that is for women going through the change of life, going through menopause. Yeah. Don't you be doing this yet.
We're so wise. I'm so
You're
wise.
not there yet.
You just can't see my gray on the Zoom, but you know, it's there. It's there. I'm earning my wisdom. This is great. This is so great. Other questions for Maria? No? All right. So I have an update to share. Maria, you are amazing. I am so excited about the steeping guide, the discount code, the ADD tea. We have a question about which tea is the best for ADHD or ADD.
Green tea and actually Japanese matcha.
Ooh, we love matcha. You did a whole thing. I watched one of your Zooms. Maybe you have a link to that of your whole matcha make. That was a whole awesome process to watch too.
I'll get you that too, promise.
Okay. Okay, I love it. In fact, on that Venice trip, and this speaks to what Judy said about like the tastes of being in a certain place and time, like nothing ever tastes as good as that first time you had something in that special place. But when we were on that, before we met you in Venice, we went to some restaurant and they had a dessert that had matcha crumble on it. It was like the best tasting thing. Like I dream about that matcha crumble. I don't even remember anything else we ate. I just remember the matcha crumble and thinking like, why can't I find matcha crumble in this?
And Italians love to cook with matcha. That's the cuisine second to Japan that I see it the most in. It's really funny.
Isn't that interesting?
Yeah.
Well, this has been, I hope it's given you a little bit of a lift too. I know you've had a very difficult day and very grateful to you for taking the time.
No, it's wonderful to connect with you all. And you're absolutely right, Tanya. It was just what I needed right now. Yeah. Thank you.
We should answer your knitting question because you've got some real seasoned knitters here. Your question was about the best stitch counter, row counter.
Yes.
Okay.
What do you all use? What do you recommend? Everyone's quiet.
I have one that it's a ring, and as you do a row, you just move it.
And is it on your needle?
No, it's on your finger, either your index or your thumb. And I love it because it's just always there.
This is my favorite. It's inexpensive, and it's got a locking thing. So if somebody comes and says, "What's that?" you're not ruined. And then Coco Knits has another one that's clearish white. That's this one is cheaper, but I like it a little bit better than the Coco Knits one. But the Coco Knits one is good too.
And where do I find
Is that Clover? Probably the company
You
Clover.
can get this at Jimmy Bean's Wool online.
Okay.
Jimmy Bean's, I like to buy once in a while because every quarter they give you credits. So if you buy $100, you get a credit next quarter. And then they send you the email that says, you have 79 cents in credits and you spend $20. So it works.
Here's
this-
another one. Here's another one that is Clover also. And it
Okay.
goes on the
I have
needle.
one like that,
And it,
yeah.
and it goes on to the needle.
And sometimes, Maria, I use that when it won't go on the needle, or whatever. I'm like, if I'm doing a circular needle or something, I put it on a safety pin and I just pin it to whatever I'm using.
Gotcha. Working on.
I just bought a knit kit. I don't know if anybody has one of those, and I don't have it here. So it's this whole thing. It's not cheap, but it's got scissors and little crochet hooks.
Not
and
everything. It's wonderful.
it's everything in one. It's like about $45, but it has a knitting, the counter in that is 3 digits, which I think is really cool. I was looking for one, sort of why I bought it, but because sometimes you do knit into the hundreds. And I wanted to do some show and tell. A friend of mine, actually a Holocaust friend, her mother's sort of retired, semi-retired from knitting. I swear they're going to be in the mail soon, Tanya, but since you're in Florida, I'm not going to worry about it until in a few days. She had all these things tucked in, and one of them was this stitch knitting counter. I'd never seen one like this. It's with pegs. Look at that. I don't know if you can see, and there are pegs for like rows, increases, and so they're different. Each quadrant, you're measuring something else, and it actually is pretty ingenious. It's not something you can hang from a knitting needle, but I should take a picture of it and send it to you, Tanya, so you could.
Please, yeah, post it in our Facebook
I could
group.
post it. Yeah.
Yeah, that's like the game Battleship for
Yes,
knitters.
There are little quotes on it that say peg it. It must be at least, I bet it's 35 years old. Some of the stuff, like most of what the patterns in the big bag were from the 80s, which were pretty crazy. But I'd never seen it. Has anybody ever seen anything like this? I'd never come across it. It was just so interesting. And I can't wait to use it because it actually, sometimes you can't, you have to kind of keep your decreases in your head or with the rows, or you're taking notes, but this is kind of cool. So
Let
And
us
that's
know.
what I
Share
have
it.
been doing, is just taking notes on the pattern, and then, sometimes I obviously forget or get distracted, and that's why the counter would be smarter. Yeah. I had
Awesome.
one back when, but yeah, I need to get another one.
Oh, there's the ring. That's the Clover ring Sally's showing you. I have
Yeah,
that.
and you can just move it or you can put it on your thumb. You see that? And then that way, if I've misplaced things a lot, I
Right.
put it down. So then it's always there. And if you're doing a circular knitting, it's the problem of how do you hang it on, So this is really great. And then they have a little mark here. Oh, I don't know what happened.
Tanya must be showing us something. Yeah, I see that. I like that. That's interesting.
Yeah.
Well, I'm going to go, the knitting store in Boulder is actually right near where they had that horrible supermarket shooting a week ago. Talk about just horror on top of horror on top of horror. But I want to go show them some love. So I will go and get some yarns and hopefully a stitch counter in the coming days.
Can't wait. Well,
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
So much for bringing me into your group. It was a sincere pleasure. It's wonderful to see you all. And yes, I wish you all the best and happy spring.
Thank you, Maria.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. So if those of you want to stay, I just want to get through some quick updates on the knit along. And Maria, thank you. You don't need, I know you have a full plan.
Here I go. All right.
Thank you. So I'll just walk you through just some of the things that have happened or that are new and different. First, I wanted to give a special shout out to Melissa Shinsato, who's here. Yay! Thank you, Melissa, for designing this, for your amazing videos. I can't wait to do more things like that with you. And just, you did such a great job with the design and with supporting us, and we appreciate you. So thank you, Melissa. All right. Thank you too, and she's here, to Judy Fleischer-Kolb. Without Judy and her willingness to share her story, none of us would have come together in this way, and we're just so grateful to you for being such an important part of this, and first and foremost for letting me share your family story, and for coming along on this journey with us, and I can't wait to see what comes next. So thank you to you. All right, so this is fresh from Ravelry, and I know there are more because I can see how many people bought the pattern, and there are a lot of people who bought the pattern. We're so grateful to them, and just so cute. And Melissa and I are just dying about this little baby. I did send this to you, Judy, as well.
Yes.
We're all in love with this baby.
So adorable.
So good. So please share your dress wearers with us. It makes our day like you can't believe. It is just the best feeling, especially for those of us who don't have little ones around anymore. It's really a thrill to see them.
Yeah.
We had some amazing Zooms that we shared together in this process. So of course, Judy Fleischer-Kolb, our interns, Mika and Michaela, Dr. Leah Stern of the Green Sweater Project, Rena Berlin, Holocaust educator, Megan Giesecker from the Illinois Holocaust Museum, and last night, Alexandra Zapruder. All of these links will be sent out again in email, and they will also be accessible via our Facebook group and Facebook page for Knitting Hope, which is not going away. So we'll still be there. And feel free to contact if you have any questions. And of course, we thank you for spending all this time with us. This has been, I don't have words yet for what, I'm still forming. It's still happening in my mind. So it's hard to even formulate words to describe how much this has meant. And we're, Melissa and I have never done anything like this together. We published this pattern and we thought I don't know, maybe 5 people will want it. We had no idea what to expect. So it's been really a huge honor to have all of you come aboard with us. We have a lot of things that are going on. Whoops, sorry, my little gallery view is blocking me. Okay, so we are looking into larger sized, so bigger little red dresses or big little red dresses. So we're working on that. We are working on an adaptation of the Pretty Izzy doll, and I posted about that in our Facebook group. So if any of you are interested in knitting testing that, we would be happy to give you some yarn support, and we're excited to have little red dress dolls. I'm almost done with a printable. That was an early request, was to create a printable thing to give to recipients of the Little Red Dress, and it's not suitable for the recipients because they're not literate yet, but it is suitable for the parents of the recipients. And so I had been fortunate to have Rena Berlin weigh in on that as well and make sure that it is sound from a sort of Holocaust education perspective. It's not just me putting that together. This is my home address. I'm putting it up here, and I'll put it in the Facebook as well, but I don't want to go too public as it is my home address. If you would like to donate a red dress, you do not need to feel pressured in any way, but this came up day one. People wanted to donate dresses. The museum has gladly said they would love to accept dresses. So I said I would collect them for them, so they're not getting haphazard and it's just so they can do their job. You have plenty of time. I asked for them by the end of June. So if you want to send me a dress, feel free. And if you have any questions about that, you can always message me on Facebook group or respond to any of the emails. And I'm going to give you my email address as well now. I would be remiss not to talk about Holocaust Remembrance Day after all the work we have done together, and it is coming up next week. It's also called Yom HaShoah, so you might see that word different places. The two most extensive things that I've seen are the U.S. Holocaust Memorial Museum in Washington, and you can just go on their website or Google U.S. Holocaust Memorial, Washington, D.C., Holocaust Remembrance Day, and Yad Vashem, which is of course the Holocaust Museum in Israel. And they both have incredible programming on deck. Yad Vashem's is quite extensive. So if you are curious in anything from a short Zoom to a much more extensive sort of memorial ceremony, I think there's a reading of names that's going, like there's a lot going on. And then of course, where you live, I'm sure your local museums have things going on to commemorate this important day. So wanted to share that. And hopefully, I'm vaccinated. We're gonna see you in Skokie.
Yes, that would be wonderful if a group came sometime this summer, I think you're talking about.
Yes, and now we need to have a tea party and you can teach us some etiquette. Now that we know you have this extensive training. So this is right from the museum, and I'm in conversations with them, including later today, about things that are going on in support of the exhibition. And I'm really excited to be working with them, and I can't wait. I don't know if I've ever been more excited I told Judy, I'm more excited than when I saw the Mona Lisa. It's like, forget the Mona Lisa. I want to see the Little Red Dress. I got my priorities straight. So, so the exhibition, there's a very special photography exhibition. There was a Jewish photographer who captured a lot of images of Shanghai during the war years. So it's really a special thing. And this is a special exhibition that will be in Skokie starting July 15th. So again, I don't have a date as to exactly when the knitting activity and now tea party will happen, but we're so going. It's so gonna happen. So I want to just give you reminders of how to keep in touch. The YouTube links are still up. I will post today's YouTube. I will post Alexandra from last night. The pattern page, if anything changes, of course, we will communicate through the page and through email on the pattern, my Instagram, and of course the Facebooks for the Little Red Dress. And you have here my personal email, and you can feel free to contact me. And I forgot to put Melissa's pattern email. MF Shinsato is for pattern support if you need it. So that's what I got. And I tried to do my speediest speed talking here. So I will open it up. Any other questions? Thank you, Beth. Thank you, Susan. I am so excited to meet you. I know it's happening. It's like, we're just gonna come together.
Tanya, I just had one other idea that if anybody had thought about making a doll-sized dress for like an American Girl doll, I thought that would be kind of cool.
Melissa, do you have thoughts on that? I don't want to put her on the spot.
Oh, no. I mean,
my connection's really bad. What was the question?
I thought that it might be interesting. I didn't know if anybody had thought of it, to make a doll-sized version of the dress, like that would fit like an American Girl doll.
That is a great idea, and we might be pursuing that.
Okay, cool.
We just want red dress. We want like all the red dresses everywhere. And if you haven't seen, Melissa's other side hobby is miniature, everything miniature, knitting tiny things. So I think there might be some tiny red dresses that might show up at some point, like tiny, like half an eye, not even half an iPhone. Like, yeah. So yeah, we're not done with the red dress. You're far from done. Oh, it looks like I missed something in the chat. Sorry. What about synagogue? Oh, wonderful, Mary. Thank you so much for sending the red dress. I am honored. I'm so excited. That will be really fun. Really fun. Well, thank you again. You guys have like made this hard winter, like you have lifted us up through this hard winter, and it's always fun when I open up the Zoom, I never know. It's like, what's gonna happen today? And seeing your faces and getting to know you has been truly inspiring for us in so many ways. So thank you again for taking the time. Thank you for your knitting and your dresses, and Miss Fleischer-Kolb, tremendous gratitude to you for like, this is beyond having you part of this. So we are so very fortunate, and just thank you. Can't
Well,
wait
this
to meet
was a
you.
perfect time in lockdown to have such an exciting event. I look forward to all your session. It was absolutely wonderful. So thank you for making my winter much more exciting than it would ever have been.
Agree. We will agree. Well, thank you, everyone, and we'll see you in Skokie, I hope.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you much.
Thank you.